Francois, tell me a little bit about like when it comes down to the measurement, right? And kind of
Yeah.
maximizing ROI at these shows for you. Give the audience a little bit of specific into what you installed, what you're tracking, what you're
Yeah.
doing, what like let's get into some of the details.
Yeah. So I'm looking at four criteria, right? When I do my ROI analysis. So the first thing I'm looking at is the new revenue generation, which means after a trade show, you generated some leads. I need to know within a 6 months period of time because our selling cycle is 6 months. So I need to understand within 6 months of going to a trade show, how much new product have I sold? So continuous communication with sales. We use a CRM system, right, to track that. That's also a very important key to the ROI. It's your CRM system. So for purposes of the exercise, we use Salesforce. So I will be on Salesforce trying to understand within 6 months how much new revenue were generated from that event. Second thing is revenue retention. These are your existing clients who already have your product, but they buy an upgrade, or they buy a different product, but they're already in your CRM, they're an existing clients. Number three is a travel avoidance savings. So that's a very interesting data that I use. What it means is when you're a salesperson and you travel to an event, you're going to meet within 3 days a lot of people that will have take you maybe 20 different sales trips to meet, right? So you spend, let's say, $1,000 in travel and expenses, travel entertainment to go to a trade show, and you get to meet 20 people, right? That could have cost you $20,000 separately to meet those 20 people. So the way we calculate was we take the amount of salespeople who went to an event and we multiply that amount by 1,000, depending where you're going, right? But we come up with saying that the average T&E, travel and expenses, is $1,000. So if I have three salespeople going to an event, I can have saved $3,000, and that goes towards my revenue. And then the last things we're looking at, it's called promotional value. And promotional value is really your branding exposure. You have people that are coming to your booth, they are looking at your logo. Maybe one of your CEO is speaking in front of 1,000 people. You have attendees looking at a slide with your with a video, with content. Maybe you're sponsoring a reception and you have branding everywhere. So we kind of calculate the number of impressions, how many people were in the event, and we come up with a formula. That's actually something I learned from the CTS certification. So that's the four criteria we're looking at, right? New revenue, retention, travel avoidance, and promotional value.
That's awesome.
So Salesforce is your living document, right? Because Salesforce will tell you from that trade show today, $100,000 were generated in close. So, you want to make sure that this number was tagged to the right event,
Yeah.
because sometimes it takes, 5 events, right? It could be a trade show, a meeting in town, they come to our head office, it could be a dinner. You have 4 touch points
Hmm.
that then generated a close one. We create a campaign every time for one event. So salespeople have to go back to Salesforce and enter their lead and tag them to the right campaign. And that's how you track your selling cycle, right? And you can say,
Yeah.
oh, that event influenced the deal of $100,000, for example.
So what do you do about I mean, let's go through those real quick again. You have new revenues, what's being
Yes.
tracked. You
Yeah.
have revenue retention, which is existing customers and getting them to spend more, increase their
Yes.
order values. You have travel avoidance, which, from
Yeah.
my understanding, is basically just calculating it would cost each salesperson $1,000 to go
Yes.
travel to see one customer. How many
Yes.
customers did they see? And you're factoring that as a savings, and it
Yes.
goes into the cost of the event, right? And then
Exactly.
you have your promotional value, branding, exposure, impressions, and things of that nature. So
Yes.
walk me through from the new revenue and the revenue retention, right? On that pipelines side of things. Walk
Yeah.
me through that. Like attribution is difficult in big companies, right? Trying
Yes.
to delineate exactly where the sale came from.
Yes.
So are you more so tagging the interactions that you have with an event tag? And then you may not be the original lead source, meaning this person may have already been spoken to or a prospect or seen marketing or talked to a salesperson, but you are saying, hey, we saw them at the event, we engaged with them at the event, and then they became a new customer within 6 months. And that is going to be attributed to events in some way, shape, or form.
Exactly. So salespeople, they're in charge of that. They're the one who go to Salesforce, enters the information. They have to do the right tagging, use the right campaign name, right? So
Yeah.
for the big big deals, I always triple check. I'll tell them, I say, listen, I just see a deal on Salesforce attributing to that event. Are you sure? And sometimes you'll have surprise. Sometimes they'll say, no, Francois, don't tag it to that event because we met them months ago and the key was, this touch point. So for the big deal, I really try to triple check because I don't want to have, I want to have the
Yeah.
most accurate information possible. Because remember, you're doing ROI to make a decision. Am I coming back next year? Do I need a
Yeah.
bigger exhibit space? Do I want a bigger sponsorship? Or, should I cut or maybe just
Yeah.
attend or maybe go somewhere else? There's so many events.
Don't you think, like, 'cause I've thought about this a bunch, especially the bigger the company that you get, right? Like when you have that big deal,
Yeah.
the odds are you can probably figure out the original source, the original way of how they got into your sphere, your pipeline, your ecosystem, right? But it
Yes.
almost doesn't matter because companies with 6-month sales cycles and larger companies, there are a lot of touch points before somebody buys. There's a
True.
lot.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
to me, one of the things I think about is people get very lost in trying to figure out, no, this was us. This was us. We did it. We did it. But really, it's always a group thing. It's always multiple touch points and events, in my opinion, like that big deal that gets closed that you say, hey, it didn't originate with us, but you had a touch point. My
We
question is how
facilitated. Yeah.
influential, yeah, how influential was that touch point? Because events have this way
Yeah.
of being a strong catalyst for pipeline.
So, I mean, I definitely want to make sure that we get the credit, right? Especially if we facilitated that deal. It could be a demonstration that request that came from our
Yeah.
website, and we forward it to the salespeople. But guess what? At the event, they met, and then they did the demo on site, and then they attended a session that maybe one of our experts,
Yeah.
gave, and then they took them for dinner. So I want to make sure that that events team or marketing gets the credit, not sales.
Yeah.
So I mean that's really important because if you don't take the credit at the end of the year, they're not going to see marketing as a strength. So hopefully now, if you do things correctly using the right CRM and if
Yeah.
you put some methodology, you'll see the results fairly quickly, and then they'll be willing to work with you all the time. So they'll be like, oh, hey, help me out with creating new opportunities. What can we do
Yeah.
at that event to make sure we have demonstration and
So are
facilities?
you only those new revenue deals, are those only ones that are pretty much like net new deals that come from events? That's
New
what you're counting
clients,
those.
exactly. Yeah,
New client, and
new
you're the
clients. Yeah,
original source of how they got into the pipeline.
exactly,
Got it.
exactly.